Hi, so I'll introduce myself while the panel's getting settled. I'm Dr. Sonja Andrew, and I'm an associate professor here in the fashion and textiles area in the School of Design at the University of Leeds, and I'm involved in the Back to Baselines and Circular Fashion and Textiles projects. And the panel members that I have here with me today are Dr. Elizabeth Gaston, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Gaston. I'm from Northumbria University, and my project, again, is challenging established norms in the industry, particularly in coloration in knitwear. Thinking about, most of the research currently undertaken is about specificity of colour and repeatability of colour, and I'm just challenging what that does to the sustainable outcome, particularly in knitwear.
Thank you, Liz. And next?
Hi, I'm Gerrard Fisher. Today I'm here from QSA Partners. We're doing some research work on extended producer responsibility fees and citizen tolerance for those fees. How high might they be? Should they be? And alongside that, because we've been doing some related work in another business on data manipulation for EPR, developing a data structure standard to help small businesses structure their data in a more consistent way to report into an EPR system.
Thank you, Jack.
I'm Rachel Gray, probably saw me for TA5. RAP are running two projects, one that's just finishing, one that's about to start. You won't be surprised, it's behavioural led. The first one is understanding how people buy pre-loved clothing, particularly from the group of people who don't buy at the moment, totally not engaged. And the second part is the one I'm really excited about, is rummaging through people's wardrobes to find out how they think about them, what they do with them, how they organise them. You find that.
Hi, my name is Edel Moore, and I'm a lecturer in the School of Design, University of Leeds. And my project is looking at breaking the fashion habit. We're looking at fashion buying behaviour, and we're looking that it's not always a choice of buying or not. Sometimes it's a habit, and overconsumption is used not only to buy or have a product, there's also maybe to change a mood, for identity, to show something to somebody else. We don't really use the word addiction. No, you use addiction there because there's a clinical definition of that. But again, similar to what has been done on gambling addiction. So we're looking at the whole buying process.
Thank you. Okay, so we roughly know which thematic areas you're aligned to, but you might want to mention that in the next question. So we'd like to find out a bit more about the baseline data that you're really looking to establish through your project. So if we start with you, Liz, that would be great.
So it's the thematic area is 5. It's about the behaviour change. And I'm really looking at behaviour change of designers. We have that oft-repeated idea that 80% of a product's impact comes from the design stage, but designers don't have that much agency over what they do. So the project is looking at how we can make little nudges within that design-led sustainability solutions that could be successful, that are commercially viable now, so that we're still going to have profitability for a manufacturer. Then we also have to involve the consumer, because if the consumer doesn't accept it, then it isn't going to be profitable at all. So it's really thinking of this bit of the project is really aimed at the consumer and how a consumer understanding of how tolerant consumers are to colour in their variation in a garment. We say the whole industry is built on absolutely having that repeatable colour across a product line. So I've looked at another instant solution that we can do is using waste leftover yarn at the end of the season, using dead stock yarn. And it helped me. Here we have. Yeah, these are literally hot off the knitting machine.
Okay.
So I've been blending. It's nothing. This bit of technology is nothing new, nothing radical, but just blending dead stock yarns so that we can mitigate the colour difference and the count difference. So it's not about the specifications of manufacture. And I don't know who's got 2 and who's got 8. I've got garment 2. and who's got garment 10?
I've got 7.
So
Should I
be in that already? So these two are the furthest apart. Actually, they've only got one colour, one yarn linking the two. The rest of the yarns within them are different. So the idea is, in daylight, if you put them next to each other, you can see, does the consumer care? And so this is my baseline. We have all these assumptions that we have to be accurate, we have to communicate colour accurately, we have to dye to a specific dye tone. What actually we don't? And that's my question. So I produce these. I'm just about to undertake some consumer testing with some consumer focus groups across the country. And there will be a little bit of a workshop at Northumbria if anybody would be interested in coming up to Northumbria to take part in this behaviour exchange.
Is it okay if I pass these around?
Absolutely, yeah. As long as you don't do tag. But no, clean tag. But and I have to say, I work with
Depends what size they are.
not small. I worked with John Smedley so they can feel beautiful, but any manufacturer could do that with whatever level of yarn they're using. Rather than getting rid of it, they could do one style a season, usable, their yarn they have to pay to get rid of. There's no cost to that manufacturer. Yeah. So yeah. Like solutions.
Yeah. So Gerrard, your baseline data, what are you trying to establish through your project?
I'll focus on the EPR Visible Fee project. So we've been working for a long time with brands and governments trying to identify a way to potentially have an eco-modulated EPR fee to encourage circularity. But there's absolutely no data on what will the market tolerate. So the government talked about putting a penny on a garment. That would raise about £40 million a year. More recently, I think RAP spoke about 10 pence a garment. So that would be £400 million a year. But no one's gone to shoppers and said, what level of fee would you not notice, would actually begin to persuade your change of behaviour, and would you find intolerable?
So this kind of data on market, response is, market tolerance really is going to be quite invaluable.
So hopefully, yes, we hope so. So we've gone through a wave of focus groups to understand how people do and don't like to talk about a fee. For a start, they don't like the word fee. They're okay with charge. Probably don't want to say tax. That might not go down very well. But also talk about how it might be presented. So, understandably, they don't want a lot of complexity. And actually, there's a lot of appetite, even among the less eco-interested people in society, to have something akin to the traffic light rating that you see on food. They'd find that quite useful. In our survey responses, over 50%, 60% of people were saying they quite like this idea of a red, amber, green alongside whatever the charge might be.
So would we be talking about something like green, it can be recycled, amber, some of it can be recycled, red, we've got a problem?
So we split our survey into two groups. So we took people who bought clothing in the last 6 months. There's sort of 800 odd people in each cohort. One half were told it's all about recycling and recyclability of the garment. So green is highly recyclable, red is not. The other group were told it's kind of this weird basket of sustainability measures. So green is it's really cool and groovy and ethical and low carbon, whereas red is none of that stuff. And people respond similarly to that, whatever the situation is. They just like the simplicity of indication. And in fact, even in the less eco-focus group, there was even the suggestion that you might arrange your shop in red, amber, green. And some days they'd shop red, other days they'd shop green.
I could certainly do with that for food shopping. I know that would make things easier.
Still go to the...
When I want to feel virtuous.
But then in the actual survey results that we've had, people have started to indicate what price they would tolerate or not even notice on the £10 T-shirt, £20 pair of jeans, a £150 coat, or how big that charge might have to be for them to think, I'll look at one next to it because I want a slightly cheaper fee. And people are talking pounds. So actually there's an awful lot more headroom for persuading consumers if you want to. But the question is that then adds a lot of price to the garment. So how do we balance that?
Sounds like there's some really interesting findings coming out of that, just about that market tolerance from both those projects on different areas. So if we move on to Rachel now, the baseline data that you're looking to establish through your project.
So our baseline data is very much focused on a very particular segment of people. And Liz alluded to it earlier about segments, because everybody is different. And we need to focus in on getting some very specific data on specific segments. So the segment we chose were people who do not engage with pre-loved at all. They don't buy it, but equally don't shop online too much. So we recruited and we did a series of small scale, I guess, call them focus groups. But what we actually did is we gave them eye tracking glasses and got them to buy stuff online, fake accounts, not real money. We were looking for some key bits of information. Is there a gateway clothing or occasion that they would enter that pre-loved market for? So is it a T-shirt? Is it kids' clothes? Is it party? So these tasks were set up to try and find that out. Equally, do people rate price over quality when it comes to pre-loved? Are they looking at pre-loved in the same way as they buy new, and how they look at that? And also, what are their key factors that would change them from buying new to buying pre-loved? This was done through the technology and a series of tasks, but then also some structured interviews to find out more. And then we're also going back to the very same people next month to see if they're doing anything different. So with all of this, we're hoping that we can understand the key factors for getting people to change their behaviour in this space. But equally for the businesses, if they are operating those online marketplaces, they potentially are missing out on a huge customer base here. And what was interesting that came out about the kind of recruitment of these groups. So we went out there and asked that question, do you buy online, do you buy pre-loved? The people who were in that category are generally older, I make a generalization, mostly female, and actually with high purchasing power as well. So they are people that you would want to have in your marketplace. And I think the scenarios were based on the groups themselves. So it could be you're going to a party, you're buying for your family, you're buying a present. And we mixed those up so different people got different scenarios. And we chose 6 platforms. So again, we wanted to test that charity factor. So we had 2 charity platforms, Shelter and Oxfam. We had Vinted and eBay, which are common. But then we also had North Face and also a company called Reskinned. I don't know if you're familiar with Reskinned. So they sell for a lot of brands. They are kind of an intermediary, so they do the sorting and repair, and they sell for key brands. So we wanted to see if there was differences across which platform you were using, not only in doing that. So we're just getting the results in hot off the press. Do you want me to wait for your next question?
Yes, you should hang that back. So yeah, I've got some findings to share.
Well, we go to that next.
So from our baseline, I think there's 2 elements for our baseline because, first of all, we were looking at RAP. So they have said that the average person has between 100 and 150 garments in their wardrobe. I think an average, maybe it might be better taking the modal, because for some of us, that would seem quite a lot. And for others, it's only the stuff that we're showing in our, in our bedrooms rather than in the spare room wardrobe and upstairs in the attic and things like that. So there is this cycle, especially probably maybe for a younger generation, which our project is looking at, where there's this cycle of buying. And it's probably not owning the product is the main reason for buying. It's scrolling, it's putting up your Instagram photo afterwards, it's your identity to your friends, it's having something new. And again, it's that younger generation. And the more we're looking into it, more we're seeing identity is really, really important. And we didn't see that before we started getting into this project. So we're looking at the theory around that, and we're looking at the theories around behavioural change. And there isn't that much when we look at behavioural addictions, looking at fashion. There's onomania, which, even the sign of it, it's manic buying, some mad woman buying madly. It's the research focus. It just sounds strange. So we're looking at other behavioural models and looking at habits. And we've really been starting to look at gambling, because again, that's just in the last 5 years being classified as a clinical addiction. And if we move back to maybe 15, 20 years ago, that was something, we'll just stop it. And I think we're moving probably with social media and the availability of buying fashion 24/7 and the identity creation for a lot of people through fashion. We're looking at the entire buying circle. So it's not just owning, purchasing, pressing the buy button. It's how the time it takes up in your life. So we're looking at the habit loop. And for anyone who hasn't looked at that, I mean, it's cue, action, and reward. So we're looking at those three different areas, and we're looking at we can have interventions based on psychological scale models. So we've picked three models as well. So we're looking at emotional attachment, we're looking at self-reported habit, and then we're looking at the Bergen shopping scale, addiction scale. So by combining those three together and then looking at how they interact with cue, action, and reward over the entire buying cycle, we're looking at if we can have an intervention. So we're going to have a workshop. So our first baseline, to get back to that, our first baseline was looking at all the theories around habitual behaviour and seeing which ones were most appropriate to online fashion shopping for a younger generation. And then we're looking at the cue, reward, cue, action, reward, and we're saying, okay, can we have an educational intervention so that people can reflect on that and see if they can break some of those three elements? And does that have the next baseline? So we'll do a questionnaire type scale before the workshop and 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, and see if there's a difference. So there'll be some quantitative information there. So that's the two baselines, one theoretical, one more quantitative.
Thank you, that's great. So I'm very conscious of time. So just moving on now, it's really about the data that you have, but also about future opportunities that you feel are coming out of your projects for further research.
So you've seen that haven't got to the research part of my work yet. I've got to kind of some understanding about how we can use colour and pattern, and that comes back to prior research. Before I started the project, I'd done a little bit of consumer testing in a quite coarse way. I made some little hand-knit half-scale garments as part of an exhibition, and asked visitors to the exhibition to answer questions. And 81% of respondents, and there were about 400 respondents, said that they didn't care which one they got. They just liked them. But I didn't know whether they fully understood the question. I didn't have any nuanced research. So from this, I'm hoping to find nuanced consumer research. They're really consumer focused. However, what it is leading to is actually that there needs to be more evidence for designers, for the design sector. So I've got some more funding from AHRC, and that's going to look at design. It's working with designers. So using the same kind of ideas, but looking at extending the design potential, but the acceptability of it as a design tool. So that's the next stage of the research.
It might be a good point, if I can interject, to just mention the International Textile and Colour Conference that we've got coming up. You've got an abstract ready? That's great. Listen, glad to hear that.
Yeah. However, this is where I overlap with the skills in that the project, again, it's really looked at a lot of those fashion consumers. And so the designers I'm using professional knitwear designers, but I'm also using A-level textile students as well as a designer. So it's looking at that skills base of understanding for knitwear and for sustainability.
Thank you.
You put this with on.
Same question.
It is the same.
Yeah, so for us, we've tested a small range of notional products, got some consumer responses on those, and we're currently scrutinising quite some detail the statistical spread of that data. It's quite interesting because there is some variability, but also even amongst, say, for example, income groups, there's some consistency as well. So we need to do some more analysis on that. We're hoping to publish a paper later this year if we can. But then the next step for us would be to go to the sort of more rigorous conjoint analysis, sort of forced A/B testing for simulated scenarios like Rachel was talking about. And then you can get down to a real scientific pounds and pence figure for what is tolerable, what is not tolerable. And from our EPR work, then we can match that onto, if you were to raise money in that way, is that enough to fund the kind of collection systems that we were talking about today and the technology investment sortation to get materials back into marketplaces?
Right. Thank you.
So the outcome of this work, we're going to use in two ways. We're going to create a new user, let's say a new buyer adoption guide, not necessarily something we publish at that, but it will be shared within the circular business models work stream of RAP's work, because one of the things that we really hear back from particularly brands and retailers who are kind of thinking about this pre-loved marketplace is the difficulty of knowing how to do it, how to make it profitable. So, it's again knowing the users, knowing the segments, so you can look at them in different phases of your when you're planning to do this. So you'll have those people that jump on the bandwagon straight away, but then you need to encourage others through. So that new user adoption guide, and some of the stuff that's coming out of this is not rocket science, and it's not different to selling new, but it's weird that it's not being applied to pre-loved. One of the biggest things that came out for this was trust, as having trust in the brand, or trust in the garment's quality, or trust in the cleaning products, or even trust in the return service. None of this is rocket science, but for this group of people, they just weren't engaging because they were always comparing it to new. Price comes into it, but not so much as you would think. It's more about trust. And older people think that pre-loved is for younger people because of the way that Vinted and eBay have created this culture through their advertising on TV. Is it Love Island and another reality show that Vinted? So there is all of this culture being set up. And the other area that comes out strongly is choice. People aren't seeing the choice in pre-loved as they are in new because they're trying to compare. They're not considering that the pre-loved, route can be something completely different, and you can fall in love with the garment for other reasons. So there's some real basic stuff that can be applied from new to pre-loved, and some other stuff that needs to be changed, the mindset from buying new to pre-loved. So we're going to put all this together, and we're going to take it to a group of brands and retailers and get their feedback to see how it sits with them, and then we'll put that all into the findings from this project.
And can you see a next step on from this research, from these findings?
Yeah, I mean, the next step on is to work individually with brands and retailers that don't have a pre-loved offering, and we have the opportunity to do that. So it's going to be applied directly into. So we've already got some people that want to either start doing it or improve what they're doing it. So hopefully they will take this on board.
Thank you, Rich.
So again, sort of with the output, again, there's two different variations of it. So moving forward, I think from a theoretical point of view, there's lots of different things that we can apply it to. And even the team that we're involved in are talking about with partners that they have in South America. South America. And they're thinking about social design and how we can have interventions to help people sort of engage with social design a little bit more. So it's from a theoretical point of view, there's a lot of things that we're thinking about doing. We're very much prototyping the intervention itself at the moment. So there's lots of post-it notes and things like that. So obviously that can be translated into something, maybe games-based or something like that that's a lot more advanced and interactive. We can see problems with what we're doing again because it's over a very short period of time. So you can change a habit in a month, but will it still be that way in a 6 months, in a year, and sustaining it is the difficulty. So we've got things like writing yourself a letter in the workshop and things like that. So there's a lot more development. So it's very sticky notes at the moment. But I think there could be a lot of different applications that can go into open.
Thank you.